Hello everyone and welcome to Timelapse Talk, a new series I'll be hosting here on YouTube where I go over time lapses and speed paints while providing commentary about my thought process and choices. If you're seeing this now, you're either a Ko-fi member getting this episode early, hello my little bibinkas, or you're viewing this on the official launch date. Either way, welcome. Now, this isn't going to be a strictly weekly series because these episodes will be talking about specific artworks that I've done. I'll be making these episodes as I go. If you are on Ko-fi, however, as I said, members get a week early access. Time lapses actually are one of the behind the scenes I had behind Ko-fi. However, I love talking about why I make certain decisions in my pieces and my thought processes on this stuff, and I figure that I might as well share it to everyone after Ko-fi gets to it first. So, on to time-lapse talk. Today, we'll be going over this Deltarune fan work I did, which I sweetly entitled Equip. A Snowgrave piece featuring Kris, Dreamer, and Noelle Holiday. Now, the rest of this is going to be unscripted, so wish me luck. Now, starting off, as you can see, this is the original sketch that I came up with before I started, and it was at first just a very simple doodle. I didn't really expect to go further with this. I really liked Kris's crying eye droop. I really love that, how it's red like blood and how it matched Noelle's bleeding finger because of the thorn ring, and she's also crying, everyone's crying. And then I looked at it, the composition was already pretty good, and I thought, you know what? This would be a banger print. If I formally set it up to be in a portrait format instead of just a custom size. So as you can see, I cut off Noelle because she looked pretty good already, and I wanted to resketch Kris because I felt like it could be just a little bit better for what I had in mind. So here we are, starting off with the face, copying the emotion of the eye as best I can. And you can see here that I drew the hand in a very specific way, it's cupping Noelle's chin. We'll get back to that later. But I'm already kind of satisfied, so I move on to Noelle. I kind of edit her body a bit. It's not really that logical to me, so I go through that a lot. But I ended up realizing I hated the idea of Kris cupping Noelle's face. That was a bit too forward for me, despite the implications of the famous scene in chapter 4. So I was like, okay, that really sucks and is very scary. Let's redraw it. That was horrible. So I redrew it. And I'm trying to figure out the hands here. I'm not gonna lie, I was really worried that it would come off as way too creepy, so I reeled it back and put Kris's hand back on Noelle's shoulder. It was getting a bit much. So I'm very glad that I did that. That's also what I did for the original sketch anyway. Originally, Noelle is hunched over, but it felt like the whole composition of the piece was leaning a bit too much to the left. So eventually I started experimenting with making her hips, making her lean back instead so her hips move forward. Now, Noelle is obviously much taller than Kris, so I can't even explain to you the logic of this print, but yeah, it felt better to do it that way. Now, what's really sick and twisted is that in the original, Kris and Noelle did not have their fingers intertwined. But because this is Snowgrave and I'll get to why I made this print in the first place. But because it's Snowgrave, I really wanted to emphasize the horror of the intimacy that they have. So I figured, oh, this is so sick and twisted. It's a brilliant idea. Originally in my designs of Kris actually has fingerless gloves, but it was starting to clash with Noelle's hands way too much. So I just told myself, okay, whatever. For this print, Kris is not going to have fingerless gloves. And as you can see, I started color blocking because I was starting to get a little bit confused on what was happening. I wanted to make sure everything looked okay. We're fixing the body here because I was like, okay, her hips were a bit too forward. Like, I want her to slouch again. I had a hard time from what I remember when I was making this piece, because I really wanted it to show, you know, I wanted it to look like a married photo, but like really evil. Now I started to redraw the hand because I realized, okay, that finger intertwining thing, I love the idea, but it was looking a bit messy because first, it's a really good idea, but the fingers overlapping each other, like the lines touching each other over and over again, was very confusing to the eyes. I wanted to capture that intertwining finger idea, but in a cleaner way, in a more obvious way where your brain didn't have to think. So I think what I chose here was much better. And here we go, me trying to fix the anatomy and understand what I even wanted. Luckily, I figured it out. And then I think this piece took a really long time. I've been procrastinating it for a while because back when I was making it, because it was such a big idea that I really wanted to do a good job. So as you can see, I redlined everything. So I have the sketch, and usually I would just start sketching it, finishing the sketch up, and then lining it. But because I took a long break, before this red line, I took like a couple days of a break, that I turned this red again so I can re-sketch it. So you have my first layer of sketch, my second, which is this red line, and now I'm doing my third layer, which is kind of crazy. But at this point, I'm pretty sure I'm lining. This turning into familiar territory. I made this print like sometime last year, so a lot of details is starting to slip on what happened here. But if you're having a hard time with doing your lines, because this is okay, yeah, I'm doing the lining process right now. If you're having a hard time doing your lines, my biggest recommendation is honestly to make your sketch layer absolutely transparent, or to recolor it to something pastel. Good lord. Finally, here we are with the coloring process. The coloring process I have, because I use Procreate, is a bit of a long one, and I know that, you know, advanced art programs like CSP and many more like Krita and so on have very advanced selection tools to make coloring faster, but oh well. Oh my gosh. Something that's always tricky for me is that when I put Kris and Noelle together in a scene, they're both people of color. A person of color and a monster of color, in a way. So I try not to make their skins blend too much. Also, this is a bit off topic. I hate drawing Kris as yellow. Like, it pains me as an Asian person. It feels weird and wrong. So this is me doing my best to try and like not make Kris have the same exact skin tone as Noelle. The shading process. The shading process, which is the beginning of the rendering process, is always the hardest part because it looks so freaking ugly. Every single time, the whole time I was doing this part, I was absolutely hating myself. I was, oh, friend. Hello, friend. I was absolutely nervous because I was asking myself, what am I doing? What is happening? It's a very fun process, don't get me wrong, but because you haven't added like the hard edges and the highlights, everything feels wrong at the same time, even though you're doing the right thing. Before I do the highlights and the glows and all that, in my process, I sometimes color line work already, as you can see. So now we're starting to get into the more yummy parts of rendering, thank God. I decided to go for a blue one because, okay, first of all, a lot of artists will use blue as their secondary lighting, their backlighting, because it's so interesting, right? It gives, and you know, color theory, maybe this is obvious, but I went with blue here because this is a scary piece. This is a horrific and cold piece. I wanted to show that coldness through the blue. So we're muting some of those strong colors already, but bringing back that warm light as a kind of spotlight or center stage. Yes. Now, this part is going to be my favorite thing to talk about, the symbolism. So, besides the thorn ring obviously being right there, the symbolism of the Snowgrave's cutscene in Deltarune is very important to me. So, first off here, using the thorn ring as an origin point, I brought in that cracking symbolism, you know, and whether it's glass breaking or roots growing, whatever it is, a growth or a destruction, I wanted to first of all bring that in, because that's the most obvious symbolism of Snowgrave that we have right now. And then it was looking too thin, so I made it thicker. And then one of the most important symbolism to me was bringing back the rose. For those who don't know, the rose is a very, very important flower in Deltarune. Not just because it will remind people of revolutionary girl Utena, but because that was the original animation for it. A lot of people don't even know that. It's so sick and twisted. But I wanted to bring it back because now I'm going to get into... Remember what I said earlier? When I said I'll talk about why I made this print in a bit? Here it is. I made this print because I was so upset with people not taking Snowgrave and its implications seriously that I wanted to bring back the horror. It's in a similar fashion to people not remembering why that Spamton is actually a character of horror. I wanted to bring it back here. Like, guys, just because the rose was removed doesn't mean it meant nothing. It doesn't mean it was not the original intention. It was. It was in the final game. So I added it here. And, you know, of course, with the thorny vines and all that, it all ties together. And I made it this, like, frame because, once again, the themes of Snowgrave are so weird. Haha, weird rap. Like, Kris and Noelle are in this really strange relationship of being like pseudo married, even though it's not consensual. So I wanted it just felt really appropriate to make it look so formal, as if they were in a loving photo, but everyone is miserable. And now my favorite part is adding the hair. For most of this print, I used 2 brushes. I usually use basic brushes, let's just say that. So for the line work, I used the HB pencil from the original Procreate library, and when the new Procreate library came out, I brought it with me into the new Procreate brush library. And what I use for the roses is, I forgot what it's called, but I'll put it on screen. Another default brush. What I use for rendering like the hair and the shadows is a mix of HB pencil, and for the hair I used Warata. I freaking love Warata. If you look at my newer pieces now, I use Warata all the way. I'm obsessed. Oh my gosh. I did add too many tiers, so I think I erased one later. And then I had this original idea when I was first sketching this on my real life sketchbooks. Inside the frame, it would be the Overworld colors, but outside of the frame, it would be the Darkworld outfits and colors. So as you can see, outside of the frame, Kris's elbow is blue, and Kris's fingers are blue, Noelle is wearing her white dress, and so on and so forth. That was my original intention. And I wasn't really 100% sure if it was a good idea, so as you can see, I erased it for now. In the background, you also saw that I drew white dots, which are supposed to represent snow actually, but I recolored them red. They were going to stay white at first, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is taking away too much from the original artwork, so I made them red. You can interpret it as either falling rose petals, because that is almost exactly the original animation that was shown in the Snowgrave cutscene, or you can see it as falling snow, which references chapter 2 with Noelle using her powers for harm. Revisit my idea of like bringing back like the Darkworld colors. If you see the artwork flashing grayscale, that is because that is how I personally check my values, which I do a lot. I played with the values a lot because it was 100% not obvious that Noelle was wearing a white gown, but at the same time, if I made the gown any brighter, it would again take away from the central focus and composition of the piece. Also, really quick, you'll notice I quickly drew the watch on Kris. Canonically, Kris should not be wearing the watch right now because I based this idea off of being after chapter 4, but I drew it in there just to emphasize to viewers that, hey, this is 100% about Snowgrave. Do not take it any other way. This is evil, sick, and twisted. As you can see, at this point, I also officialized that I wanted to keep the Darkworld as part of the drawing. So something was missing, however. The Darkworld felt like it was out of place, even though I wanted it to be there. So I had to ask myself, how do I tie it all together and not make it look like I just threw it on there? It felt like it was missing something. And that is when I asked my mutual Aquariyoom for advice. I showed him the picture and he suggested that since there's a lot of blue on the outskirts of the frame, I add it in somehow. And I realized, oh my gosh, you're so right. Now, some quick little zoom-ins. I added more blue snowflakes in the background, as you can see, because even though I already have those like falling rose petals or falling snow, I wanted more references to Noelle's affiliation to the cold. And then these spikes in the corners next to the roses, this is my intention. You can either see them as ice spikes or rose thorns. I love being an artist. As you can see, Kris is no longer crying red, but that is because I made the decision for Kris not to just stare into the distance, but to look at the viewer intently. Like, specifically, Kris is not looking anywhere. Kris is looking at you, the viewer. Kris is holding on to Noelle, and it looks intimate, but Kris is in so much pain. Noelle is obviously in so much pain and is looking into the distance. If you scroll back, or if I'll do that for you actually, there was more tears, but then I just removed them. Because I was like, okay, you can cry, but you're crying a bit too much. So I removed like one. And as you can see, in Kris's tear, out of all the tears, the teardrop that falls from Kris's eye is a sparkle, or specifically it's a shiny diamond looking shape, and it's supposed to reference save files, or it's supposed to tie in like the design of like what what a save point looks like. So yeah, equip. Lack of control, bringing in a lot of symbolism, horror. I changed a lot of positioning because I wanted it to be horrible to look at, but also not too horrible. And there you have it. Thank you for watching this episode of Timelapse Talk. I'm pretty sure I missed something in my excitement to finally show off the behind the scenes of this piece to you guys. So if there's anything you'd like to know more of on this piece, comment down below. If there's something you wish I talked about, not just for this artwork, but also for future episodes, let me know below and I'll try to implement it. Now, if you're new here, remember to check out my artwork. I post them on all my social medias, link in description. And if you'd like to support me and get early access to these episodes yourself because you find it interesting mayhaps, feel free to support me on Ko-fi, where you'll get a week early access to each of these episodes and future video content. Thank you to my Ko-fi members for supporting me and inspiring me to keep creating and sharing every day. Specifically, thank you to Amy Charizard 17, Gert 53, Mo Bubbles, and Evelyn, otherwise known as Corvus Spot. Thank you so much, everyone. Seriously, am I gonna keep saying thank you? Yes, because I don't know how to end this. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. This has been EbonyTails.